Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushal Mehra. My guest today is Dr. Narendra Kumar Mehra. Dr. Mehra is the Indian Council of Medical Research National Chair and the former Dean Research for the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. He's also known for his research on transplant immunology. So, Dr. Mehra, welcome to the Cārvāka podcast.
Thank you very much.
Sir, recently you have written a couple of articles that have been published in the Hindustan Times that caught my attention, and I was really keen on talking to you about those. So we'll be dissecting this discussion in part 1 and part 2, and obviously we have a major slideshow that you have prepared, thankfully for us, to make your point of view clear. So before I get into that, I just wanted you to first start with giving all the listeners, who are listening to it live right now or are going to watch it later on this medium or on the audio medium, could you give us a base idea about what COVID is from an immunology perspective?
Yes. Thank you very much for bringing me on. This is my actually first experience to be on the podcast. I don't even know the meaning of the word podcast, but I mean, as you told me that it goes live to a lot of people, which is absolutely fine. And I have had a very active scientific career where, you are in race, you are in research race with the rest of the world. So I have published by now 500 papers in leading national and international journals. Of course, during the course of that, got all the awards and recognitions and things of that sort. This is actually the first time that I'm writing for the common man. And, since I'm locked inside the house, I haven't really gone out to my office for the last 3 weeks. I thought, why not take this opportunity? It is nearly a month now that I'm locked inside the house. So I thought, why not take this opportunity to actually educate the people of the kind of, particularly on COVID and immunity, because the immunity does come into play whenever we are talking of any infection. And then the infection comes in, although we have to treat the infection, the natural treatment is done by your own immunity, by your own immune system over there. So that is why I wrote the first paper of mine, the first article came up in Hindustan Times on April 1, and then I followed it up, the one more, which came up on April 10. So this is what I've been doing. So I thought I will talk to you today, and I'm going to use some of my slides over here to talk to you. Can you guys see my slide?
Yeah, it's visible now on the screen.
As you asked me, my title of the whole subject is SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. I want to first of all explain to you the meaning of these two terms. The first word, the SARS-CoV-2, is actually the virus, what you commonly call as a coronavirus. Actually, it is called SARS. SARS is something that we have already seen in the past, and I will talk to you about that, because SARS was seen first time in 2002. So we are not very much unfamiliar to coronaviruses. But this particular coronavirus, we call it as a novel. It's a novel coronavirus. And since we already had SARS due to coronavirus in the past, in 2002, we are now calling it as COVID-2. So coronavirus 2. It's a SARS-like symptoms that we see due to second form of the coronavirus. So the first, therefore, terminology is SARS-CoV-2. That's the scientific way of writing the coronavirus. Second is the COVID-19. That's the disease that you develop. Now, COVID word would come from CO from corona, VI from the virus, and D from the disease. And 19, of course, is the year 19. As you all know, that we came to know about this towards the end of 2019. So it will stay as COVID-19. So COVID-19, whenever you call, it actually means the disease, and coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 is the virus there. So let me talk to you a little bit more about this SARS-CoV-2. Can you see my slide number 2 now?
Yeah,
Can you
I
all
can.
see?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
good.
can.
So SARS-CoV-2, actually the whole story began in December 2019 when the first news from Wuhan seafood market, seafood market is a wholesale market in the Hubei province of China, where the news came up of this particular virus. The news actually came up that some people are falling sick. And actually, we saw the videos that some people just a guard standing over there suddenly falls down, and he actually is suffering from this virus over there. The virus seems to have been transmitted from bats because the Wuhan seafood market sells all kinds of meat. It's not the kind of market that we have in India. They actually enjoy all kinds of meat, and I don't believe that they eat bats, but they do have bats in the market over there. Of course, there are other views saying that they also the Chinese also eat bats. But the question is, it seems like that this must have jumped species and come from bats. Now, the viruses do jump species; they come to the humans from the animals by jumping a species. And what they do is they sort of undergo some kind of a mutation for and this mutation will make them effective in the humans. Now it is therefore a human virus. It doesn't go back to the bats. It is now affecting the bats only. The earlier two viruses that I will talk to you about have also jumped species. So jumping species of the viruses is known to us for a very long time. So WHO declared it as an outbreak of febrile respiratory illness of unknown etiology, because the symptoms were very much like the flu virus over there. People suffer from fever, cough, and the febrile. They're generally feeling weak. So the WHO said it's an outbreak. It's an outbreak. They had not yet called it as a pandemic. The pandemic word came up only in January, once they had seen that it is now going into other neighboring countries as well. So they had identified that the causative agent of this particular COVID-19 has to be novel coronavirus. That was the word terminology given at that time. So therefore, you will read many times they have the word N, COVID, N is for the novel there. This is something novel that the world had not seen earlier. And they isolated it from the lungs of 3 infected individuals over there. What China did very good was, towards the third week of January, they had also identified the virus and they sequenced it. And they, in fact, shared the sequence with the WHO. And those sequences have now become available to everybody else around the world. So even in India, the virus has now come. So our 2 very important centers in India have also been able to get this virus from the Indian infected individuals and trying to see, because the idea would be to do the sequencing of these at some point of time, compare whether the sequences of the virus that you see in China or in Europe or the States is similar to what you see in India or not. Because one of the theories that you will hear towards the end of my talk would be that some people believe that the lower numbers that you're seeing in India, or the severity which is low in India, could also be related to the less virulent form of the virus. But this is just a hypothesis, and nothing actually confirmed as yet. But anyway, since its emergence, the disease has spread to over 200 countries now. That is why they need to call it a pandemic. The earlier 2 coronaviruses that came, they had been only localized to certain areas of the world. So therefore, they were not called as a pandemic. Now, let me go to the third slide, which indicates to you the infection is spread through droplets of an infected individual. You see, the infections normally can be transmitted either through the fact that the virus or the causative agent is floating in the air, or it can fall as a droplet. This particular one is special, that it spreads through droplet of an infected individual, and that is why we are saying keep a distance. So the social distance, but I think more appropriately should be called as a physical distance there, where we are saying minimum of 6 feet of distance, and you should wear the also the mask. So the infection is spread through droplets of an infected individual by coughing and sneezing, or through prolonged contact with an infected individual. So these are the two ways that the infection can spread. Now the ICTV, of course, the International Committee for Taxonomy of the Viruses, they keep looking at the viruses from time to time around the world. They named it, the name I showed you on the right on the first slide, that's the SARS-CoV-2. So that is the now an accepted scientific name, and because of its relatedness to the earlier SARS-CoV-1, you might like to call. And I've already told you that the WHO named the disease as COVID-19, and I told you what COVID would actually mean. Let me go to the third side. This is very, very important for people to know that the coronavirus infections are not something new to us. We have seen it in 2002, SARS-CoV, which we never called it as SARS-CoV-1 because we never knew or never thought a coronavirus 2 would also come up. So that was the first time that this virus was seen. The SARS, it means severe acute respiratory syndrome. And that's the syndrome that we always see. The mortality in SARS-CoV was rather high, 10% of that, while the SARS-CoV-2 that we are seeing so far, if you take the total number of 17.5 million that are infected to today, and the number of deaths about more than 1 lakh or so, the death rate, the mortality rate is about half of that. So many people earlier thought that the SARS-CoV-2 is not a very dangerous virus. So why actually blame the virus? Because after all, nearly 80 to 85% of the people, they developed a very milder form of the disease there. But what is more important, I wanted to tell you that the SARS-CoV-1 also had germ species. It came from the civet cats at that time. The next one was in 2012. That's the MERS-CoV. That was also coronavirus. It was called the Middle East respiratory syndrome because it was localized in the Middle East. There the mortality was even higher, 37% there. This was also a germ species from coronary camels, the camels you have in Saudi Arabia. So these two viruses also came through the germ species. Let me now focus on what this COVID-19 is. COVID-19, or the virus that we are talking about now, is even more contagious than the others that we have known in the past. It spreads from human to human transmission because the virus is viable only on the human skin or the humans over there. It has to spread from only man to man. So therefore, there's a need for you to experience the social distancing. And I therefore said it comes through the droplet infection and or through the direct contact there. It is an incubation period of about 1 to 14 days, usually about 3 to 7 days. But we know it can vary from one individual to the other. Infection has been reported in all age groups. It is not right to say that only the aged would get infected. Infection can be in every case, and including the children. We have seen even a newborn child has also been found to have COVID infection. Now, majority of the infections that we see are of the mild type. In fact, now if you look at the total number now, you can even say 90% of the total infections around the world are mild type. We have a problem in India. The problem is not, it's actually not a problem. It's a good thing in India is that the Indians actually enjoy a broad-based immunity. We have what you call, the Hindustan Times wanted to call it inherent immunity. Let me explain to you that the inherent immunity that we have is due to the fact that Indians or the people in the Indian subcontinent have seen a very high microbial load. We actually live in a microbial load. Our environment is full of microbes. So with the microbes being there, our immune system has learned to live with those. So therefore, our immune system has become broad. So we do enjoy broad-based immunity. When I say broad-based immunity, you have to compare yourself with the Europeans or the North Americans or even the Scandinavian countries over there who have not seen infections. Let me give you an example there. Scandinavia, and I also have done a lot of work on diabetes, the susceptibility genes, the susceptibility markers in type 1 diabetes, which you also very popularly call insulin dependent diabetes. Now, in Finland, children are being born who are diagnosed with diabetes at 3 months of age, because these are very clean parts of the world. The infection rate is almost zero over there. Whatever part of the world the infection goes down, the autoimmunity goes up. So they have more of autoimmune diseases. Compare that to Africa, where the infections are very high. There, the autoimmunity is very low. So this is what we have the basis of what we call hygiene hypothesis. India has a double trouble. We do have infections. Infections have not gone, and the three big killers, the TB, malaria, and HIV, are all here. And we also have our lifestyle diseases now. As our living standards increase, we also have the lifestyle disease. So autoimmunity is also increasing in India. So in India, we have both autoimmunity as well as the infections. But the infectious environment that we have lived in over the years, over the centuries, have given us a broad-based immunity and inherent immunity in us. When I say immunity, we also say that the immunity is actually done by our lymphocytes in the blood. There's a specific type of lymphocyte called T cell, and there's another cell called the B cell. The B cell, which makes the antibody, the T cell is the one which actually fights the organism directly. But and we will talk about that. And once the T cell has a particular infectious agent, once it goes on to also to develop memory cells. So I'm sure a lot of us in India, we have broad-based memory cells as well. So if we have seen an organism similar to the coronavirus or the COVID-2 in the past, we would have some kind of memory cells over there. So that is the basis of what I say of broad-based immunity. So we do have that. Let me talk to you now a bit on the common symptoms of COVID-19 that everybody would like to know. The three common symptoms are fever. Fever, of course, also comes up in influenza or the flu virus. There's a cough. There's a particular type of a cough that you have. And a good clinician can actually assess the way you cough, that this cough is coming deep from the lungs. So therefore, because the coronavirus has special affliction for the epithelial tissue in the lungs, and I will explain to you a little bit on that as well. You also develop myalgia. You feel fatigue. You feel tired, and pain in the muscles and all. What you also have is what you call leukopenia. Leukopenia is white blood cells. The white blood cell number actually goes down. And in these white blood cells, the special kind of cells, the special kind of cells are the lymphocyte. The lymphocyte are our soldiers. So the lymphocyte number also goes down. There are 2 or 3 viruses that we know in which the lymphocyte number goes down. What you will normally expect is that once you get infected by any pathogen and any virus, your lymphocytes should be able to fight with it. So they should divide and become more. So lymphocyte number goes up. But in HIV, for example, you have seen in the past, HIV because makes lymphocyte at its home, it sort of destroys it. It's like a guest coming to your house, which actually asks the owner to get out over there. So, like in HIV infection, in COVID-2 infection also, the lymphocyte number goes down. This is the key. This is a very important diagnostic marker that we have. So, think of a young man of 40 years of age who is exposed to the coronavirus 2, the COVID-2. He may not have symptoms, or that he may remain symptomatic, but we might see blood count and we find lymphocyte number down, but they bounce back in a healthy person or in a young fellow, or the one who is going to recover. The lymphocyte number comes normal by about 7-8 days, or between 7 to 10 days. If in some people the lymphocyte number doesn't come back to normal and consistently stays down below the normal, actually, these are the guys who will then want to develop a severe form of the disease, and some of them would die. So the severity that you're seeing is associated, correlated with the number of cells in the number of lymphocytes in the blood. By the way, in India so far, it could be also due to the broad-based immunity that we have, or it could also be the fact that the government of India acted very smartly and on time and announced the lockdown. And actually, we have been actually very active right from January itself, because India has seen so many infections that the doctors in India, the healthcare workers in India are so very new infection there. So our health tank, the think tank, has been active right from January there. So that has been of very helpful to us. That we could use the month of January and February to keep our house in order. So this is the way the development of the severe form happens. But the severity of infection in India so far is not that high. It's actually very, very low when we compare ourselves to those in Europe and North America. Also, the people who actually need the ventilators, the numbers are very, very small. Okay, let me go to the next slide and show you this: the high risk individuals. Who are the people who are at high risk? In these patients, the disease may take a serious turn or a serious course. Definitely those who are beyond 60 years of age, because in aging, as you age, there is what is called immunosenescence. The immune system goes into the senescent stage. The lymphocytes, your soldiers, are not that active as they were during your younger days. Or people with morbid diseases like diabetes mellitus, chronic lung disease, hypertension, renal failure, or many of those people who are actually immunocompromised because they would be on immunosuppressive drugs over there. So people on immunosuppressive. So these are the people who are definitely at risk. So the elders in the family have to take care that they have to be really inside the house, and they should not interact too much with others over there, unless you're absolutely sure that the young guys moving around in the house have not gone out. They have followed the lockdown effectively, and they have no way to get infected there, because many of the young people may be carriers of the virus over there, because they themselves have not expressed it. The disease has not shown, the symptoms have not shown, so they may feel that I'm not infected. In fact, they would carry the virus in them. So the caution here is that the elderly in the house should not hug their grandchildren or children. Remain away. The physical distance has to be there. Now, the next slide is a little more technical one, but is there anything that you want to ask? Is there anything that somebody wants to ask me now? Because let's make it as a informal chat.
All right. So actually, I have a few questions to ask you. So I was just waiting for you to cover the slides as much. So I want to go back to the microbial load factor. Now,
Yes.
that is something that is very confusing to me at a personal level too. That when we say India has a very high microbial load, I get it said. So correct me if I'm not getting it correctly. So what you're trying to say is the innate immunity of the average Indian, the capacity to take so if I was to put it in a very simplistic manner, the immune system of a Indian is like a proper army regiment in comparison to, say, the average westerner whose immune system is of a civilian. So in that comparison, because we are exposed to so many pathogens, now if that is the case, so I had a very different question. Now obviously, with prosperity, societies become cleaner, societies become more disciplined, societies become more hygienic, societies just basically go into what is the Western society trajectory. I mean, what we call the Western way of living, societies become cleaner, less polluted. So basically, so how does one, Dr. Saab, how does one actually create the balance then? How do we take the advantage of this microbial load while we still create prosperity? I mean, that was something going through my head as you were giving the slide explanation. I was like, यार ये तो हम लोग जा रहे तो prosperity की तरफ हैं, और डॉक्टर साहब इन अ वे बोल रहे हैं कि हम लोग इतने एक्सपोज्ड हैं पैथोजेंस को करके हम प्रोटेक्टेड हैं. सो हाउ डू वी ड्रॉ द बैलेंस देन?
आपने बड़े अच्छे दो शब्द यूज किए जो मैं करना नहीं चाहता था. मैं सोचा आई एम टॉकिंग टू रियल ले पीपल, सो आई डिडंट वांट टू use the technical term. You use the word innate immunity. Yes, our innate immunity is stronger. And when I say microbial load, of course we have the microbial load. What kind of hygiene are you talking about? You compare yourself to Europe. And the hygiene that you're talking about is confined to very limited parts of India. Our majority of Indians are still exposed to infections. When you move out from your little home that you feel is very hygienically kept, after all, you're going towards, all over India, you're getting exposed. Now, for example, TB is here. Tuberculosis is very high. We have all been exposed to the tuberculosis bacillus there, right? Tuberculosis bacillus is only some of us. It's only a very small number of us who actually come down with the disease then finally. And in our country, we have all taken BCG vaccination there. The vaccination since the 1970s, of course, has been very, very strongly given. BCG vaccination in India has been regularly given, basically to protect you from TB actually. Of course, it does only for the children. But then we have seen this. We have seen these kind of infections. In my age, we used to have even the vaccination for smallpox. And we have seen malaria actually. Malaria is so very high. You are every season after season, you are infected. And whenever a European comes to your house and he sees a mosquito going around, he becomes very, very aware of it. For us, हमने तो रोज देखा होता है इसको, तो हम इसकी परवाह नहीं करते. तो similarly, look at the the broader India. मक्खियों से भरा हुआ खाना. मतलब एक वीडियो हमारे पास आया तो उन्होंने बताया सब किस तरह के खाने हम खाते हैं. तो the hygiene levels, the street food you have and all that. So it's only a very minuscule number of people in India who are maintaining their hygienic standards of the type that you have in Europe actually. Otherwise, we don't have that. Our hygienic standards are still very low. And of course, I've been to China several times. China has done that. The cleanliness levels, of course, in the big cities. I've gone to their 6 or 7 the big cities in China. Their cleanliness levels are high. I believe that in 20 years' time, perhaps, we will come to that stage, but we are not yet. But what I'm saying is, in your childhood, in your day-to-day life, come out your house, you are being exposed to all kinds of pathogens that our counterparts in Europe are not exposed to. So that's the microbial load we are talking about.
So one more question I had, sir. So one is, so as you were explaining in the slides about SARS in 2002, and again you mentioned MERS too again. Now, what is so distinctly unique about COVID-19, as we notice that COVID-19 has been spreading far faster and a lot more in comparison to the previous two viruses who kind of fall in the same family. So what are the reasons that they have not spread as much in the past as COVID-19 has now in terms of
Yeah.
transmission?
In this slide, I had a line where I said COVID-19 or coronavirus COVID-2 is more contagious than the others because it travels from human to human. If you are infected, I come and touch you, I will have the virus in my body actually. Or you touch a switch over there, and you are infected, I go and do the same thing, I also get it. It's human to human. The virus finds it an opportunity to sort of stay from one individual to the other. So it is very contagious, unlike the other two in the past. They were not like that. So here we have, and the virus can also sustain for about 8 to 10 hours on surfaces, on wooden surfaces, on your handles of the doors, handle of your car, and all that, everywhere. And if you pass by somebody who sneezes or coughs, you had it. It is there. And one very good video came from our friends, they sent it from Japan, using very high density cameras. They have shown that even while you are talking, even the guy who has the coronavirus 2, COVID-2, talking, the droplets are still coming over there. And we have felt that many times. You're sitting close to somebody who talks, and there are droplets that come out of their mouth as well, or from the nasal cavity there. So the root of this infection is from mouth or from the nasal cavity, or it can come from any surface. Because if I have it on my hand and I keep touching my nose or my mouth, and you keep doing it every day, it's something that you can't actually escape. It actually goes into there. So the route of transmission of this virus is different. It really travels very fast, and that is why we say it is more contagious.
All right. So one more question I had. I actually wanted to take an excerpt from your article, and I'm just going to read it for everyone so that they can hear it out too. So in your first article in Hindustan Times, you had said you spoke about epigenetic factors, where you say epigenetic factors that include environment and food habits. I want to focus on the food habits, may also play a beneficial role for countries such as India. Much literature is already available in Ayurveda and other Indian systems of medicine on the definitive beneficial effects of Indian spices in augmenting immunity. Dr. Saab, can you elaborate a little bit on that too, so that the viewers can get a fair idea about that?
I'm actually jumping slides, and I wanted to show you my first article. And this is what I had said over there. Can India be an outlier in the spread of the corona? And I felt that we could be an outlier over there. And why are we saying? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
And
perfect. It's even better, sir. Actually, that one was even better.
see that? Okay, I
Yeah.
will do that. I will
Yeah.
show you my first article slide here. Can you see that better now?
Yeah, it's even more
Yeah.
clearer.
My title was "Can India be an outlier in the spread of COVID-19?" And I really wrote this, and I was thinking about it. Got the three or four my friends. They said, "How do you base that?" Now, my Indians may have genetic advantage. We do have a natural advantage of the broad immunity that I have. And the three factors that I talked about are the observed for the lower observed numbers in India, with almost zero occurrence of the severe COVID-19, are the broad-based immunity that I've talked to you about due to the microbial load. Number two is the environmental factors, and you yourself said the kind of food we eat. Our food is full of masala and haldi and all that. Haldi has this curcumin. Curcumin is known to sort of upload the immunity. We take palak. Palak is a lot of that. Zinc is also known to sort of increase our immunity. And the kind of foods that we take, we have a lot of zinc. So all of these broccoli and the beans that we take, the palak that we take, and many other foods, and the garlic and all that. So the kind of cocktail of masalas that we take, didn't have to talk about here, because I said, look, I mean, there is so much of literature in Ayurveda already available for us, and they every time talk about the foods that increase the immunity. And a lot of the Ayurvedic experts say that if you every day can put haldi in the milk and take it, it's a good concoction for increasing the immunity. So there are number of those. So the third one that I talked about there is even more important. That is what I'm saying about the due to the microbial load, the possible role of immune response genes. And I wanted to come to that. And since you have asked me this, let me jump the things and I'll talk to you what I mean by this. And for that, I want to show you this slide. And again, I will make it bigger. For, for you to understand what do we mean by broad-based immunity, how is it brought about due to the microbial load that we have, due to the various pathogens that we have. I must take you to this stadium, immune response stadium. But in this stadium, there are 3 players and not 11 players that you normally have. Our first player is MHC, major histocompatibility complex. MSC is the short form of that, which in humans is called the HLA, the human leukocyte antigens. And that is what is talked about in my article number 1. Now, this player is our batsman. Mind it, our immune system does not see any pathogen directly. It sees the pathogen only if the batsman, if the HLA system, if the first player presents it to that. The T lymphocyte in the humans or in man is a very snobbish cell. It can bypass, it will see the infection growing in the body over there, it will not act. It says, you present the foreign antigen to me, present the pathogen to me. This is also the basis for the cancer growth. By the way, the cancer grows in humans due to the fact that many of the cancer cells downregulate the player number 1. The player number 1 expresses on the surface of another cell, which we call it as APC, the antigen presenting cell. Is like a macrophage. Its only job is to present the antigen to lymphocyte. Lymphocyte is like a कुंभकर्ण, वो सोया हुआ है, वो कहता है मुझे तो पहले जगाओ, मुझे बताओ पहले. वो प्रेजेंट करते हैं, महाराज ये एक फॉरेन एंटीजन आया है. तो वो बैट्समैन का रोल है, द प्लेयर नंबर 1. The player number 2 is your pathogen. This is your antigen. It's like a ball. This is like a coronavirus over there, very large. It gets broken down to smaller until we call it as a peptide. It's the peptide that gets bound onto the batsman, like a ball against a batsman there. The MHC peptide complex. जब तक ये दोनों जुड़ेंगे नहीं, ये पैथोजन बैट्समैन के साथ जुड़ेगा नहीं, तीसरा प्लेयर एक्शन में नहीं आता. तीसरा प्लेयर इज आवर लिम्फोसाइट. ये वाला, ये जो ये येलो दिखाया मैंने, ये येलो सेल जो है, ये डायरेक्टली इसको नहीं देखता. इट ओनली सीज इफ इट इज presented over there. This is what happens in cancer. If in cancer the cancer cell has downregulated this batsman, this particular cancer cell will keep growing. Lymphocytes are also there, but they don't talk to each other. For the talking to happen, they must present the antigen. Let me qualify this by showing you a very simple way. I am a formal guest. I'm a formal guy. I'm a very senior guy. I come to your house. You offer me a cup of tea, but you offer me a cup of tea in a mug like this. Okay. Can you see the mug? No. Is it visible to you? Oh, yeah, here.
Yeah, I see it.
That's the mud. You offer me the cup, tea in this. I refuse to take this tea because I'm a formal guest. I don't want to take it unless you give me in a very formal way on a cup and a saucer, right?
Got
A
it.
cup and a saucer. The cup is like the COVID virus, coronavirus, and this plate has a groove on this. Can you see the groove?
Yeah.
And the cup sits over there. This one. Unless this combination happens, the HLA complex and the pathogen, they sit together. Now, this particular complex will be seen by our soldiers, by the immune system. Immune system needs a formal presentation of the antigen. This happens with viruses, bacteria, parasites, mismatched transplant antigens, cancer, anything, because the immunity has a role in each of those things over there. So our plate, fortunately, in India, the Indian plate with this groove is a very broad one, broader than our European counterparts. And this broader has become due to the microbial load. Because we have seen so many microbes, I should use the correct word now, the diversity, the extensive diversity of HLA genes in the population of India. Our diversity is very high. So our ability to present variable pathogens to the immune system is better than our European counterparts. And we have shown, and I have brought a few technical slides to show you people what do I mean by the our plate being very, very broad. Here I wanted to show you, or can I just, uh, this one shows to you. What does this HLA do? It is like molecules present the corona pathogens to T lymphocytes of the immune system. They catch this, the apple right in the center there, and the immune system remains quiescent unless this is done. If you don't do it, it will not do that. And this is what is said about the third point, the possible role of immune response genes. I'm using another terminology here, the HLA complex and the immune response genes linked to our HLA system. Extensive diversity of HLA in the Indian population uh, with occurrence of several novel genes. Novel means we have seen in India now, and my work of about 3 to 4 decades in AIMS showed us that we have several novel HLA genes in India which do not occur in Caucasians. I'll give you one example of this particular one. And HLA8, HLA system is very, very extensive, very broad. And that is why it's very difficult for us to find a suitable donor. My major area of work is actually organ transplantation and selection of a donor for somebody requiring an organ transplant. Because the HLA system is very diverse, it is, if you compare this to the blood groups, you also match for the blood groups when you have to give every transfusion of blood. Here you have to match for HLA genes when you have to transplant an organ, kidney or liver or heart. But this system is very broad. Let me give you an example of one of those genes. There are at least about 20,000 genes known so far of HLA, or even more. One of them is very common called A2. This A2, now with the new technologies that we have, we can split into many, many subtypes, more than 200. But the Caucasians only have the yellow part. Look at the Zambians or the Africans would have yellow and 2 more. And the Japanese have a yellow, but then 2 more that are not found in the Zambians or that are not found in the Caucasians. And our studies indicated what happens in North India. Look at this. There's a khichdi here. The kind of diversity we have got of just one of those 20,000 HLA genes is so very high. And this O2011, the red part, is something which is novel to India. Does not occur in any other population. The only other population that I saw was in Saudi Arabia. I was in Saudi Arabia some times ago for a month or so. I saw over there. In Europe, does not occur over there. So that's the novelty that we are seeing. And this novel genes, novel HLA genes, our HLA plate becoming larger is only due to the microbial load that the population has experienced. And we are even now finding, with even better tools, we are finding even more and more of those. I wanted to show you in this one other particular point, that the only other population in Europe where I found this red component was the gypsies. I have been going to Hungary very often. The Hungarians have also made me the fellow of their Hungarian Academy of Sciences. In Hungary, the gypsies have this particular one. And you would have heard from your grandmas in the past, the gypsies, बंजारे जो हैं जहां भी गए हैं वो इंडिया से गए हैं.
Yeah,
तो
they migrated from India.
बंजारों में वहां पर वो है. So ये जो इंडियन जीन स्पेसिफिक है, ये इंडियन ही है. So you can imagine if coronavirus would use this particular red component to present the antigen to the lymphocyte, we would be in a better state to sort of do that. So I'm just giving one example. There are hundreds of examples of novel genes and unique haplotypes. I've also brought one more slide for you. I'm trying to become a little more technical for you, but please stop me if you think it is technical. This particular one, I told you that we have also been looking at the susceptibility genes. Which are the children? A family comes to us, the mom says, I have my one child who is affected with diabetes. Well, what are the chances that my other child would have? So the whole world, and there are lots of groups around the world, including our own group in AIMS, have been looking at the genes that confer susceptibility to develop type 1 diabetes. Look, in comparison to Europeans, compared to only one set of genes that they have, we have multiple sets. In Europe, they have only these blue ones, and the blue one is also, of course, expanded. They have only one type. In India, we have the blue one. The blue one is also very expanded. So the diversity of all of these genes is very high. So we have been trying to explain. I should tell you that in these 80s and 90s, when I used to go to Europe and North America presenting our data with those novel genes, and everybody would want me to explain it. And I used to say, okay, this is due to the microbial load. But I used to say this microbial load with a lot of pain in my heart. In a way, I'm telling them that I come from the part of the world which is dirty.
Yeah.
And that is why we have this. But this dirty thing has given us broad-based immunity. That's the point. You see, today, our government makes sure that we want to have India free of TB by the year 2025. It doesn't mean that it will become zero. It doesn't mean it will become like smallpox, eradicated. Leprosy is eradicated, but still it is there. So I would say some amount of infection is not bad. You see that in Scandinavia, there are no infections. In Africa, the infections are very high. You have seen in COVID-2, the COVID-19 disease numbers in Africa are much lower. The COVID-19 disease numbers in the whole of Indian subcontinent are very low. Look at Pakistan, where the health system is in tatters. But even there, the numbers are not that high. You can say that they have not tested that many. And that was the blame that was also being put to Indian health authorities over there. But today we have tested 1.8 lakhs. And our numbers have remained the same. Our positivity rate, when we had tested 20,000, because I believe that the Indian think tank did a very remarkable job. They didn't want to unnecessarily test anybody, and everybody there. They defined these are the people that we will do. So even with the 1.8 lakhs, our positivity rate is only between 4 to 5%, which is much lower than anywhere around the world. So this is due to the broad-based immunity. And let me show you another slide, which I had brought specifically for you, this one. And my second article, of course, was primarily to talk about the lockdown. Because, if the advantage, this was my second article. We said COVID-19, India has done very well till now, but lifting the lockdown is not visible. And here in my article, I compared China with India. First case in China was on December 31, 2019. We were a month after that. First death in China was on January 9 to 2020. We were again 2 months after that. Lockdown was announced in Wuhan on January 23. You know why? Because in the first 2 weeks of January, China had realized that their numbers in Wuhan are really exponentially going up. So they announced a complete lockdown. And you remember that in the last week of January and the February, the whole world was laughing at them, the kind of lockdown that they had. Because there, the lockdown means lockdown. Nobody can come out. In India, also, we have successfully, a large country like India, and with all those densely populated pockets that we have also been very successful so far. But there have been instances. For example, this 3-week lockdown that we had, I would say the first week was gone because of those interstate migrations and people panicky buying of stuff and all that. And then that unfortunate incident that came up from the Jamaat also. So we announced lockdown in India exactly 2 months after that. Wuhan's lockdown was for 75 days. And on April, I think, I would say that April 4 or something, or April 5, they have now lifted it. Everything's back to normal over there. Because they had realized at that time that the virus reproduction number that we call R0 or R0, which denotes average number of new infections generated by each infected individual. And they had seen during early January, Wuhan had the R0 of 2.38. Unless the R0, according to the mathematical formula that they have, I don't understand that. It's not my particular field. Unless it goes down below 1, the epidemic will not go down. So for the epidemic to go down, because in Wuhan was an epidemic place, because the numbers were growing, and now there the life has come back to normal. We are probably in India, we are still between 2 and 2.5, but because of our broad immunity, we are still being saved. So this is, and now you saw this particular slide which came yesterday from the government of India, criticality of lockdown and containment for India. That if we had not announced the lockdown on 25th March, if we had, with this announcement, the green part is with the nationwide lockdown and containment. Our numbers yesterday was just about 7,500. If we had not had the announced lockdown, we had only the containment, then our numbers by now would have become 1.2 lakhs, or would become 2. And if the lockdown was not there, our numbers would really exponentially go up. And imagine in a country like India, if our numbers go to 8.2 lakhs or so, we are still in a very comfort zone. So what I'm saying is that the broad-based immunity is our natural advantage that we have. What we need to do, which we can now do, is to have an effective lockdown. And each one of you hearing my talk, kindly make sure that you spread the word and make sure that you work unitedly, and the people that come into contact with you, keep telling them, advising them, educating them on the need for the lockdown. Because once the virus number goes up, the broad-based immunity that we enjoy, we will have no role to play. So this actually is the essence of my talk my lecture number 2 that I had. But I was talking to you about some other things. If you think, because I had some slides about the situation around the globe, the milder kind, what happens in pregnancy. Some people might be very keen to know what happens of COVID and pregnancy there. Let me pick up that particular slide in case somebody is interested.
No, please do share the information, Dr. Mehra. Please don't shy away from sharing as much information as you want. I want you to share the information on the pregnancy aspect and the global aspects too.
away too much of your time. Anyway, the one other slide that I wanted to show you, let me go back to where I left. I was trying to show you this particular slide, which is right on your screen now. It's a little complicated slide, COVID-19. How does the virus get into your lungs? It is shown as lungs over there, and then
Dr.
from the
Mehra, can you
lung.
enlarge the screen so that it can be even clearly visible?
Okay, I will enlarge. Here it goes. Is that okay?
Yes, fine.
How does COVID-19, how does it affect you? It's a very complicated slide. This is actually need to be shown to the doctors, but not to the common man like this. But this is what happens in a healthy individual. You should breathe fresh air through your nostrils, through your nose. It goes through your bronchioles, and the alveoli. It goes to the deeper part of the lung. This is the alveolus, where the gaseous exchange takes place, where the oxygen brought in by the fresh air is taken up by the blood, and the carbon dioxide brought by the blood throughout circulation in the body is given back. So you exhale carbon dioxide, you sort of inhale oxygen. This is what happens normally. Now, what happens in the infected individual? In the infected individual, along with the air, you can see those small droplets over there. You are inhaling the coronavirus. So this is an infected individual which has the virus over there, but most of these people, they remain asymptomatic. But by the way, the health ministry data indicates to you that in India so far, 40% of the younger lot between 20 to 40 years of age, they have the infection. The older lot, I think they're more careful, 60 plus, the percentage is very low, 17 or so. Now, this is infection that is happening. What happens in a moderate form? The moderate form, when the virus also comes in the alveolar stage where the gaseous exchanges have taken place or need to take place, there's this fluid that keeps on accumulating there. The fluid coming in means the gaseous exchanges will not take place. Eventually, in a very severe form, this epithelium will actually collapse. The epithelium collapses, and therefore the severe form of the person is the one who needs oxygen, like you had to give it to Boris Johnson, or in a more critical stage, they need to be kept on the ventilator there. So this is how it actually goes on. So the large number of our people, they have the asymptomatic carriers. They could be carrying the virus, but by the day 7 or 10 days, their immune system becomes very, very active, and they're able to clear the virus in them. But we cannot really test everybody. The other slide I wanted to show you was this one on the structure of the virus. You see the structure of the virus, a round virus or maybe elliptical size, shape. It's an RNA virus. Approximate size is of 60 to 140 nanometer. It has those spikes. Oh, can you see this, Phil?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. I was saying it in a larger state, but anyway. So now you can see my face as well as this slide, both of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Good. So you look at the structure. So spike, you see this round shape with the spikes over there, and spikes
Yes.
with those bulbs at the end. Those are the glycoproteins. That's a sort of a fat, and that is why we say for you to take care of yourself, hand hygiene is the most important thing. If you wash your hands with the soap, because the virus is surrounded by fat, the virus would die. I mean, the virus will become uh, inactive. Inactive. So therefore, there's a need to wash your hands very well. The WHO says 20 seconds at least. I would say do it for about half a minute, and make sure that you're not doing superficial one. You sort of really both your fingers and everything and all that properly are there. And this virus would actually die then, and because of the fatty layer of those spikes there. And then of course the other components of this structure, they're talking about how it actually uh, you know the virus entry. How does the virus enter? I don't know. How do I show my next slide? Anyway, that was the one. All right. The next was this, the northern southern hemisphere divide. This is what I said in my article number 1. If you look at the trends in the number of cases over time, countries with more than 10,000 cases as of March 30, as well as India. India is right below. We are really doing very well so far until that unfortunate incidents of Jamaat came up in April 1. But even then, even today, we are not that bad. But the issue now would be, and our health think tank has been confronted, or the government has been confronted, should we or should we not lift the lockdown? There are all those people from the economic side who come forward and say, well, the lockdown is actually killing our economy, so it has to go off. But scientifically speaking, the lockdown is the most effective. You can see even the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in countries with more than 1,000 cases as of March 30 there. India is way below. This is the hotspot. The hotspot countries, the USA, Italy, China, Spain, France, and now UK as well. Look at here. Pakistan is also there. Japan, for example, there because of the because the system is very good. I've been to Japan number of times. I think the kind of uh, discipline that I see in Japan, I see nowhere around the world. And you have also seen this particular slide, which came up maybe 3 or 4 days ago. The number, they look at the population and look at the COVID-19 suspect. We are far below. So we don't want to get into this kind of a stage or that kind of a stage over there, because the population that we are dealing with, the education levels being low, the the large crowds. Look at in the Dharavi, for example, in Mumbai, in an area of 2 kilometers or so, you have about 9 lakh individuals staying over there, and it is almost impossible to do testing of all of them. But we have to find a way out. So now the only way that we will have is to develop the antibody test. The antibody test, unfortunately, the kits have not come so far. Hopefully, they should come within a day or two, or Indian firms, one or two, we will have their own kits in India. That's a zero surveillance test. That's the kind of a test that we should be doing in Dharavi. And there are a number of more Dharavis in India. I mean, look, show me any city in India which doesn't have that kind of a congregation of sort of people, the crowds all around over there. There we could do this zero surveillance over there. And once those who show antibody levels high, antibodies of IgM or the IgG type, high levels over there we know that this fellow must be infected, and then you need to do the nucleic acid test, the RT-PCR test, because it can't be done in every individual. So this is what India had done already in January and February. They were already gearing up. We were already gearing up by activating our VRDs, the Virus Research and Diagnostic Laboratories. And you have heard now that we have more than 170 labs in India, more than 120 in the government sector, and maybe 50 or so in the private sector as well. So the number of labs who are doing, now we are doing close to 20,000 tests a day. This is no joke. Of course, we don't need to do 4.5 lakh as the US has done, but we have carefully, as the situation has evolved, included the groups that we need to retest. So the antibody test would really help us even more. I wanted to show this particular slide, which will be of use to our audience here. COVID-19, the current management strategies. At the moment, everybody has heard all over that no clinically verified antiviral drug specific to COVID-19 is available as of now. And because of the fact that the virus must be sharing some sequences with the HIV virus, that some of those drugs have worked. No vaccine is currently available. Vaccine generally takes about 4 to 5 years time to come up. In this case, it could come up in a year to a year and a half, because a lot of that work was already done when COVID-1 and MERS had come. But they were the vaccine development at that time was abandoned, because by the time the infection had gone down. So the only thing that we have in our hand at the moment is the preventive measures. These are of supreme importance, and these include the hand hygiene. We have talked about respiratory hygiene, which means whenever you need to cough or sneeze, make sure that you don't do it in your hands, you do it on your arm, on the cloth. Environmental cleaning, and you yourself said that we are living in a better environment now, though I don't believe as much, because once you see others others around the world, their cleanliness levels are really very, very high. And limitation on movement around or from the house, or even within the house, as we talked about, that the elderly has to have to remain indoors. Treatment strategies, therefore, are symptomatic and supportive to maintain the vitals, the oxygen saturation, blood pressure, and all that, to those who develop a very severe form of the infection there. So, as we already talked about, most patients, this is a slide that I made sometimes ago, but now when you look at the data around the world, the milder form or the uncomplicated form numbers are even higher than this. It's only about 14%, I would say 10 to 14 or so, which go on to develop a severe form, and they may require hospitalization there. And amongst these, only a very small number is the one which will go on to develop a very critical form, and they will need to be put into ICU, and they may need also the ventilatory support. So compare this to MERS. The mortality over there was very, very high. The mortality in COVID-1 was also high. So we shouldn't blame this virus as much as it's being done. Only thing is that we have to make sure that we find ways and means to break the cycle of its production there. Let me show you one other slide that I had brought for you people. This is the situation around the globe. As I made this slide until April 10, because yesterday I gave a talk on similar lines to the Rotarians of Gurgaon. You see, the total cases as of April 10 was 1.6 million, of 1.67 millions. Look at the numbers recovered. That's a very positive sign, and I believe today the recovery has even gone more than 4 lakhs. And then you have to look into the milder form, the serious form over there, and compare this to Wuhan, where they have been able to control the virus now. Amongst the total 81,000 patients in China, I've seen the data indicating that more than 78,000 have recovered. So the recovery rate is very high. Look at our own numbers in India as of April 11, 7,600. Deaths have been 3.2, and today again, when you calculate, our numbers are almost the same. Recovered 605, and the recovery now in India is even more. So 8 or so. This number has to go up. The recovery number has to go up, and that can only happen if we maintain that the numbers are not too high. I promise you I'll talk a bit on COVID-19 and pregnancy. These are the simple slides that I brought. COVID-19 and pregnancy, no evidence so far that the pregnant woman is at a higher risk of infection or has atypical presentation of the disease, and that pregnancy could increase seriousness of illness. There's no evidence of that. By the way, this virus is very new to us, and we are all learning from it. No evidence of vertical transmission from the mother to the child, antenatally or intrapalmar. At the moment, no sort of evidence there. In AIMS, I know our gynecologists have already done the deliveries of several children over there, doing very well. And in some of them, of course, the mom was also infected. No evidence currently of infection increasing the risk of miscarriage or second trimester loss. So this is for those who may be going through their first or second trimester. There is no evidence. They have to use the similar precautions. No evidence currently that the virus is teratogenic. COVID-19 pregnancy, my other slide is benefits of breastfeeding. A lot of people talk about it. Should a COVID-19 positive mother breastfeed the child or not? So, since we don't have any data yet, the benefits of breastfeeding outweigh any potential risks there, because the mother is giving all those immunity to the child. The innate immunity that the child will get will be from the milk, the breast milk over there. Number two, confirmed or suspected COVID-19 or symptomatic mothers who are breastfeeding and practicing skin-to-skin contact or kangaroo mother care should adopt the same system, actually. Respiratory hygiene, avoid coughing and sneezing on the baby, always wear a mask, practice hand hygiene, and environment around you has to be clean. In cases where breastfeeding cannot be done due to one reason or the other, mother's expressed milk can actually be given to the child. So the benefits of feeding the child with breast milk are far more than those. And I thought a simple slide to show you what kind of drugs that people are trying to use nowadays. You have heard a lot about hydroxychloroquine as well. As I said, at the moment, there is no drug available. People have used these antiviral drugs that we already knew are active in HIV, the lopinavir and ritonavir. People have also talked about efficacy and safety of because efficacy and safety of any of these have not been established yet. It can only be done through the randomized trials over there. People have used hydroxychloroquine as well, and I would encourage you to ask me on that at the end of my talk. And of course, we talk about the vitamin C, and I talked about zinc, which actually increases the immunity. The other slides let me go through very fast, and of course I've already talked to you about immunity. I've talked to you about the role of the lymphocytes, which act as our soldiers to fight any infection or anything that the body considers it as non-self. And I've shown you my immune response stadium to explain the MSC plate. I've shown you this slide. I think I've almost nearly done on the slides that I wanted to show you. I've shown all of these. This is my last slide. I'm always very encouraged with this quote from Swami Vivekananda, who said, in a day when you don't come across any problems, you can be sure that you are traveling in a wrong path. And I think this statement is even more relevant now. We are faced with a challenge. We are faced with actually a problem. And we have to all work as one unit. Everybody has a role to play. The doctors and the healthcare workers have a role to play in the hospital. I'm not going to the hospital nowadays because I wanted to stay back home. So I thought I should write. I should give this podcast, lectures, and all that. You guys can actually educate your people around you on hand hygiene, on coughing and sneezing habits, on cleanliness, and on the need to have these social distancing there. Thank you so much. So these are my slides that I thought I will show to you, and now it is up to you people to ask me anything that you want.
All right, Dr. Saab. So first of all, thanks a lot for such a detailed explanation. I'm actually personally blown away. I did not know so many things. So I'm going to start taking a few questions from the live audience itself. So somebody has asked, is there a possibility of mutation or reinfection by the same virus?
Oh, wow. Remarkable. This question is fantastic. This is something that we are talking about now. That the news came up in South Korea that the 91 people over there who were labeled as negative, they have now shown back, and then the virus has come back into them. Is this a reinfection? Is this a reinfection of the same virus? Is it that the immunity has not worked over there? Because once you become a negative, it means that your immune system has been able to eliminate the virus that you already had ingested, that your lymphocytes or the cytokines that we talk about, or the memory T cells that we have formed, either they have become ineffective. So this raises number of points. Is it the same virus infection, or is this a new virus that has undergone some mutation over there and come back to the same individual? Anything can be there. I mean, we can really think about any of those things. So at the moment, we will not have an answer. I'm actually trying to work on that. That might be the major theme of my article number 83 that I actually plan to write now.
So Dr. Saab, Amit Kumar has asked doctor if social distancing and making the patient feel isolated impacts a patient emotional strength and obviously then hampers his recovery or her recovery.
Those are issues, sure. So that is why we keep saying people remain healthy, remain happy. Please don't. You make sure that you make your emotionally you have to be strong. After all, you are going to stay in a room isolated. Quarantine means you are isolated. You are in a quarantine room. Nobody comes to you. But you are fortunate. You are fortunate now that you have your mobile phone with you, which is like your friend. You can see all kinds of things over there, and take a leaf out of the life of the South African leader, actually, who stayed in jail for 21 years.
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela was isolated, quarantined, and totally alone for 21 years. He didn't have a mobile phone. You're going to be only quarantined for 2 weeks or so. Yes, we have known of some people who sort of emotionally break, but that's the role of people around them. The doctors keep on assuring them, reassuring them, and I'm sure they would also see the data coming around the world that there are many countries now where the curve is going down. Look at the curve is going down in New Zealand. New Zealand was at some point of time, I think on April 3 or 4, was at the same stage as we are now. Their numbers were increasing. They were about 800, 900, and now we are increasing about 1,000 a day. And effective lockdown in China, effective lockdown So these kind of news will actually brighten their hopes.
All right. So, Sir Uttam Sharma asks, I want to know about the antibody tests. Are IgM and IgG only found in COVID-19?
All
right.
For the IgG antibody, yeah.
Yeah.
So these antibodies are very specific. The kits that we make are specific to the COVID-2. As I said, that the COVID-2 sequences were known. So the antibody-based test that has been done, the antigen, after all, the antibodies that we're talking about is to an antigen over there. So these kits are specific to give information that that these antibodies are specific to the COVID. So this is a very specific test only for the COVID-2 virus. Yes.
All right. So, is there any temperature effect on COVID-19?
This is a question that we have been talking about it. We have been praying that the summer should come. This is unlike in the past when we didn't want the summer to come back soon. We want the summer to come. Again, this is a new virus. We have no data to prove that the temperature will have an effect. We believe that once the temperature goes above 40s or so, the replication cycle of the virus should actually go down. But look at countries. I mean, Melbourne, Australia, for example, in February or so, the temperatures over there are also very high. By the way, the Melbourne temperatures in summer, that was their summertime. And this summertime is absolutely like in India. The temperatures go up to 40s, 3 or 44. And also you saw it in Singapore, Hong Kong. So we don't know yet. We have no idea yet. We believe and we are all praying that once the temperature hit the 40 mark, perhaps and hopefully the replication ability of the virus will go down.
All right, actually, 3-4 questions are interrelated. They're about the lockdown. So somebody has asked how many cycles of the lockdown are required for complete control. Then there's a follow-up which says, will the government ensure social distancing once the lockdown is lifted, as in while traveling in buses and trains? And once again, somebody has said, once the lockdown ends, do you still suggest banning religious institutions and congregations?
Yeah, again, there's no specific answer to that. We don't know how long the lockdown. We can only learn from the experience of Wuhan, who had a very effective, and I say here the word effective. Effective means in a country like China, if you don't follow the rules of the game, you can even be shot. So the lockdown was very effective for 75 days. After 75 days, they now claim, if the news coming out of from there are correct, that they have been successfully able to contain the virus. We have had on a lockdown of only 3 weeks so far. I hear that the government is going to extend it for 2 more weeks, and I welcome it with open arms. My own hunch is it should be actually for 4 weeks more minimum, but I'm also conscious of the fact that it will also affect the economy to a very large extent. So therefore, I think our think tank in the government is considering several things. I read in the paper that they're considering the red zone, the green zone, and the amber zone over there, depending on the hotspot areas and all that. How will that be maintained? How will that be administered? Is a big point that we don't know yet.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take a couple of questions now, Dr. Mehra, and then I'll let you go. So just a couple of questions. Somebody has asked, can a person differentiate symptoms of allergic rhinitis and COVID-19?
Yes, of course, of course. The COVID-19, the symptoms that I talked about, the three symptoms are very, very specific. So the allergic symptoms, here you don't have running nose and all. So a good doctor would be able to really differentiate between them. That's for sure. But
All right.
the cardinal point is the fever there, the temperature.
All right. One last question, Dr. Mehra, and then we can wrap things up. I just have this one.
Yes.
So one last question I have from you is, so in case of a COVID positive death, recently there was a confusion and discussion around it. BMC had initially recommended that all COVID positive death bodies should be cremated, ideally, and then they had taken that order back. I don't know in a few hours what had happened at the Mumbai Municipal Corporation level. I'm not aware of. So are there any specific reasons that you should cremate a body, or burials are fine?
Cremation, of course, would be the best. And I was saying the electric crematorium there, because you don't want to really handle it. The more you handle the virus, we don't know yet whether the virus remains, how long does the virus remain active after death? Because as we said, that the virus actually transmits from human to human. Do you need a viable human, or do you, or can the virus can also transmit from the dead man? I don't know. I have no idea on this, and I think there are guidelines published by the government on that. How to dispose of the bodies over there. I have really not looked into that data. After all, thousands of deaths have taken place in Italy and Spain and all that. There also they sort of bury. So are they burying? I have seen that the coffins are being made and that they're burying over there. So whether the burial is done with the coffin itself, or to sort of take it out from there and then do it, I have not really seen that kind of data yet. I'm not applied into it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, guys, I think we've taken enough time of Dr. Mehra. First of all, I would like to begin by thanking Dr. Mehra, sir. Thanks a lot for giving us this valuable information and explaining everything in detail and being kind enough to answer all our questions. I think all of us, including myself, we're all a little jittery and we don't know what's going to happen, what is happening. A could happen, B could happen. So, actually, on behalf of each and every viewer and listener of this podcast, I would like to thank you.
As a parting note, I would say, stay calm, stay positive. Nothing to worry. We have to win this war together, and we definitely will. We will win the war. So nothing to be said about it. This is the only way to win the war. Stay at home. Just stay at home. Break the cycle of the virus to replicate. It should go down. As they say, Hindi में, let it die its own death. अपनी मौत इसको खुद मरने दीजिए, please.
All right, guys. So I hope we could cover all the questions you had. As you know, I'm always available on Patreon. So if you like what I'm doing over here, you can support me on Patreon. Today is actually one of the days where 9 p.m. I'm going to have that Patreon discussion. Until then, I'll see you next time. Namaste. Take care. See you in the next podcast.
Namaste.